I'm Rick Harsh, and I'm going to add to my review or re-review America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots, because now we've had two very, very good reviews of the book on BookTube by some very popular but very different um, readers, both of whom read the book in 2 weeks and intensely. And they have different styles. There's Noah Clemens of Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. He delivers his reviews more like I do. He thinks about it and then he just starts talking. I'm not sure I think about it enough, but Noah does. And then Chris Villa, who is the absolute best BookTube reviewer, who has a knack for reviewing books, in that he can capture the essence of a book and deliver that as a verbal essay. And he did an astonishing review yesterday on America and the Cult of the Cactus Boots. And probably the one of the things that most people will take away from that is that Chris Villa recognizes that this book is of the quality of the very best books ever written in the United States. It's a life-changing book, and he recognizes that. And I think that puts it, probably a lot of people would say that David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest is one of those. I don't know if Gaddis is life-changing. It's a great book. I think Chandler Brossard's later books could be life-changing. But before that, we have to go back in English literature to the Irish trio, particularly Joyce, and Ulysses, but also Finnegan's Wake. And that's a very important thing to add, because one thing that I say about this book in my first review is that you will read it again. And I found that the parts that I have read again have made me change one of my assessments of the book. I was saying at one point that the book gets better every 100 pages. When you because you feel that, and you don't notice certain things because he's seeding throughout. He's planting seeds throughout, minor things that come out later. And what you realize when you take a second look at the book, and I mean, like if you read one page, you will notice it. I read something just at random. Somebody wanted me to read him a paragraph of the book, and it was a 9-page or 9-minute paragraph. And in that paragraph, I was just blown away. It was page 170 something, and to think that I thought that the writing later on was better. No. The thing is that I think you accumulate, on the first read, you accumulate a greater understanding of what's going on, and as you go on. And what you don't realize is how well planned the book was. I don't know if there's a precedent that I can think of for a book of this length that has such a minutely detailed um, uh, plan as this. And I don't know, to to a large degree, it's the work of a genius who has that ability. Um, and all of us writers, we have, well, I guess for me, it's not a big deal to know where my book is going. But what this book does is it it leaves the realm of the great novel, and it creates a new paradigm for the novel. And it that is something that is rare in literature. It's interesting to look at the other reviews. Noah's review, um, it when I first saw Noah's review, I thought, wow, great, 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 great review. But then I looked at it again, and I thought, where Noah's caught up, where Noah runs into problems, is he's trying to give you a sort of blow by blow account in linear time, and he's giving you a lot of the details in the book, but there are probably infinite details because of the structure of the book. And if you want to understand how that works, you have to go to Via, who has read a lot of the books that informed this book, and he can put that into context for you. But neither one of them can, and they were both 30. Noah's was about 30 minutes. Chris's was about 37 minutes. But neither one of them can give you a full idea of what you get with just one reading. And the amount of detail and humor and profundity. Chris said something about 5 times or 4 or 5 times in the book. He was just stunned, and I think I know what one of them was, and it's got to do with the transformation of people into, or their environment into words. The door, on one page it just says door. And it's not just farting around with typography. What happened was the door turned into a word on paper. And they had to get through that door, and they realized that you just had to keep pulling the paper because it was now door as word. There's a extremely, extremely funny moment in the book that is probably the most tragic. And so I can't give it away, but I'll just tell you that, it requires the the presence in the book of twin Stephen Seagulls riding elephants, and their purpose is not benign. And well, uh, it leads to probably the funniest and saddest thing in the book. But why is this book? This what gets me. What I'm trying to consider is two things. Why is the book in that category of all-time greats? And I can express that it is, but without reading it, I don't think you could managed to understand. The best way I can get it across to you is that this book is singular. It's completely new. We've all written books that are unique to us, but this book is unique to literature, and it's also quite timely. Interestingly, Chris Via, when he was doing his review, he mentioned that the book came out on my birthday, and Chris Via's review came out on his birthday, and he mentioned, that this is, these are not. He kind of said coincidences, and the funny thing about that is that yeah, those are manufactured coincidences, but the reason we did that had it come out on my birthday, and the reason then, and then once that happened, it the timing was perfect for it to come out on Chris Via's birthday. But the reason that happened is because something remarkable was happening throughout. The very fact that when Philip Friedenberg ordered my book, we immediately hit it off. And his humor and my humor and Jeff Walton's humor were there was a meeting of madness. It was like folie à trois, the madness of three. Although I'm not sure that they're two, they might be 1.7. I'm not sure, but they are madly funny and brilliantly funny, and they've sent me several videos that are extraordinary, and in their hilarity, the Rick Harsh masks that they created, and so on. But I'll give you an example of the kind of thing that has happened. Maybe Phil, who has a better memory and mind than I have, will remember more of them. But there's one that's very easy for me to remember. A very important character in this book is David Lee Miller, a philosophy professor who I did not actually study under, but he ran the General Honors Program at the university I was at in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I got to know him very well. I started up a magazine that last I knew was still going, and we were just friends. I would go into his office whenever I wanted. I loved climbing on his desk because the windows were really high, and if you wanted to see out the windows, you'd climb on his desk. And Miller is a very zen presence. Never saw him get angry, but I've seen him do some really almost magical things. One time, I just dropped in on one of his lectures in one of these giant lecture halls with 200 people, and it was an hour and 15-minute class. It started at 11, it ended at 12:15, and I started to get really hungry at about 10 to 11, and I was just waiting for the right time to sneak out. Not sneak out, I mean, he would have seen me. But I really wanted to go because I was really hungry. And I finally decided, and I was about to gather my belongings. I hadn't yet done it. But all of a sudden, his lecture took him to a place where he said, "You have to be where you are." And he was staring right at me. You have to be where you are. Now that is simple yet profound, both Hindu and Buddhist to be where you are. It seems very easy. I find it very difficult because I have trouble mixing the wildness of, let's say, the um, anti-social, anti-government, anarchic personality with the Buddhist or Hindu contemplative um, personality. I've never been able to solve that paradox. But Miller, um, I might have just seen his book. It's called The Philosophy of Creativity, in which he comes up with the notion of the meta paradigm. And I mentioned it in passing to Phil on an Instagram post or whatever, or message. And the same day, he showed a photo of that book. He must have looked it up. And later he bought the book. And Miller becomes an essential person in this book and was already a central person in the Friedenbergian melting pot of ideas. Miller was already there, and there were convergences, I would call them, like this, because I don't see anything magical in it. It feels magical, but I believe it's simply convergences. And I think that that's what this book is capable of doing, is lifting us to the point where we're this vibrational sense that runs throughout the book. You know, we're it's like having antennae. We're like insects looking for each other and finding each other very easily, and we communicate in this way that could be called the convergences or recognition of what we all need. There's a great hunger for books on displayed by Instagram, by Goodreads, by Library Thing, by all social media. There is a great hunger for books, and there's an extreme hunger for great books. Not always maximalist novels, and this is not a mere maximalist novel. It had to be pretty big to do what it does, but it's shorter than The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas, for instance. But it is concerned with some very simple, fundamental political things, whereas Eddie Vegas is an all-out assault on the United States history. Friedenberg, I think, was successful and has become contagious. This book has become contagious because it is now. It's dealing with now. I've written some books I'm very happy with about what happened in history, even in recent history. But Friedenberg's not focusing on history per se, but something that persists throughout history, which is the assault on the artist, and represented here by the word, and literature. And so he's simplified the political to something very fundamental, and he is also giving people a way out, a place to be, a place to go, this imaginary united field that he talks about. I don't know. You can make a case that this is a pessimistic book because of a couple of things that occur, but throughout, it's a joyful book. And, well, it has to, any book that's as funny as this has to be. When they're in my mind, which is something that he didn't warn me about, he and Jeff Walton as characters are in my brain, and they find a replica Panama Canal, which is an hilarious idea, and in order to make it work, they have to do some writing, and or he has to do some writing, Jeff has to do some drawing, but to make it work, he can't just say, we're in Rick Harsh's brain and there's a replica canal. He's got to make you see it. And he's got to, the way he does that is extraordinary. And also, while in the Rick Harsh brain, a couple of very extraordinary things happen, one of which is extremely funny and connects us to our title. I think in my own mind, I've answered all my questions. I need to read the book again, but I already know now that it is more than I could have. I think it was more than I was ready to understand, and I think it's a book that does something more than what has been mentioned. It teaches you about itself, and you read the book once. Maybe some people get everything from one reading. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it's even possible, because so many of the details that come up later, you just have, you cannot possibly hold all of that in your mind, nor does he want you to. And you realize very early on in the book, on the second read, that you are going to read a very different book. And now the comedy of the book is something that it comes from the Friedenbergian being. This is Friedenberg. This is why I know he'll write another book, because there's so much extraordinary, brilliant ideas, and on an even deeper level, a humor that can only come from people who really love life. And this book is ultimately, even if you take the darkest view of what occurs in the book, it is still as stimulating and uplifting as a book can be, and someone like me who vomits easily can tolerate. And it's not a matter of tolerating. I'm along for the ride. I'm won over immediately, and even on the first reading. But on the second reading, I see that the genius in the writing, it starts on page 1 and it goes all the way to the end. And I don't like to think of it as planned. I like to think of it as an organic recognition of what had to be in this book, given all the convergences. And by those convergences, I mean everything Noah lists that happens in the book. Everything Noah says about the book on a grander scale is also true. And Chris Via's review is dead on, but insufficient because it's only 37 minutes. And this is a book like Ulysses, but more so Finnegan's Wake, that will be talked about forever. And so nothing is sufficient. And I think it will be annotated at some point. Watch Chris Via's Leap by Leap, and you'll see Via could begin that annotation like this, and in an hour he would have an enormous bibliography. And you don't really need to read the bibliography to understand it, but an annotated bibliography, I mean, you don't have to read all the books in the bibliography, but an annotated bibliography would be a blessing for readers like me who have not read the books that Friedenberg and Via have read. So I get the madness very easily, but there are some things, string theory, yeah, of course I'm interested in string theory. I've got stringed instruments that I can't play, but I would like to have string theory's main meaning in my brain, but I'm 62 years old. I can't learn Portuguese, and I can't, not if I want to keep running a press, but, and keep writing. I want to learn an instrument. I want to learn Portuguese, and I want to learn string theory, and I want to fully understand the Mandelbrot fractal. I almost said fracture. And for me, it is a fracture. When I'm confronted with the Mandelbrot fractal idea, a fracture occurs in my brain. I don't fully understand the Mandelbrot fractal. And in the fractal of any kind, there's a lot more I need to learn. But, I am living proof that you can be a scientific moron, a mathematical moron, and read this book and appreciate it. But now that it's been reviewed, first by me, just giving my off-the-cuff remarks the first night I finished it, and that was at 2:30 in the morning. Now I think it's probably around 3:30 in the morning. This is a book that keeps you awake because it's just that stimulating. And I don't have one here, but I wanted to do one thing that Chris Via didn't do, and maybe it was by design. He didn't show any of the drawings by Jeff Walton, and I guess I'm not going to either because I have the book here, but it's packed. There's a stack over here. Maybe you can see. The book's going out tomorrow. In addition to the ones that will be on my email when I finish this. So this is my second review of this book, and I think I've said most everything that I wanted to say. I recommend that you go to everyone who reads it must converse. See what Noah says. And I recommend that you go to Chris Via's Leaf by Leaf channel. And, the fact that one of them is a little more smooth than the other does not mean that you don't get enough information from both. And I would also recommend you go to my first one and that you watch this one because we're only beginning to talk about this book and there will be no end to it. This is one of those books graduate students will be debating, writing about, trying to decipher until the planet's destroyed.